Good morning, Kat. How are you?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm so glad we got a chance to connect.
I know, definitely.
So, what's exciting this Saturday morning? What do you have on your plate other than this exciting, you know, podcast?
Oh, absolutely nothing.
Nice.
I know,
That's that's fantastic. No, I love that. A whole Saturday open,
I know. I
for
really don't know
adventure.
what to don't know what to do with myself. I finished my most recent novella. Actually, I sent it off to my editor yesterday. I'm not sure if I want to, give myself a break or if I want to dive right into the next project.
Is that the cupcake one that I
Yes,
saw you on your
yeah,
Instagram
on
page?
Instagram. Mhm. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool, cool. Well, that's really great. It's always such a good feeling when you finish a book, like when you know it's finished, like, okay, here, it's done, you know, and then you send it out to the world, and then it kind of lives on its own,
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's amazing how quickly we shift to like, okay, that's done. So what's next? You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, Not to get too much into the questions, because I've got some fun questions for you, but do you find when you're writing you hit a wall like where you're done with the story, like, okay, I've told the story enough, I'm
Mhm.
ready to move on? Do you ever hit that wall?
I do actually, because I am such perfectionist, and I feel like that if I don't stop, I'm going to keep editing, I'm going to keep fixing, I'm going to keep wanting to change.
Okay.
So I have to.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I've actually deferred a lot of like pulling teaser quotes and pulling little short passages to my PA because I couldn't do it. I would go back to like book one and I would start flipping through passages. Oh, I like this, and like this is really nice, and I'm like, oh no, 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 this I don't like the way this sounds, and this could be so much better. And what was I thinking? This is not great. And I would get so far into my own head that it gave me horrendous writer's block, like to the point where
Oh,
like a period of a couple months where I swear I wrote like four words, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's
so I
interesting.
mean, I had to stop.
I want to talk more about that perfectionism, if that's okay, like when we get going, because I think that's fascinating, because other writers I've talked to kind of struggle with some of those similar issues. So I
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, well, if you're ready, I'll do my intro, and then we will just get right into it.
Yes, yes, of course. I'm in the process of trying to reset my computer, so my
Yeah, I
little
can wait if you want. I can. Oh,
like my
yeah.
backlight might
No,
try to pop back on. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
I'm glad that started before anything else dramatic decided to happen.
I would have cut it all out. It's okay.
Oh,
I
okay.
have to. I mean, yeah, I
Making
can.
fun of
I can
see the
edit.
fan in the
No,
background.
yeah,
Jeez.
it's
Um,
fine. It's fine. Just relax. We're just gonna have fun. We're gonna have a nice conversation. I'm super casual. Nothing to worry about. Just if you couldn't tell by my backdrop,
mhm,
we're just relaxing. It's all good. So I've got a fan too. You just can't see it.
mhm.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll do my thing and we'll get going.
All right, that sounds perfect.
All right. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Between the Lines. Today we've got a romance writer, Kat Long. Kat, welcome to Between the Lines.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm very excited to be here this morning.
Good. I'm excited to have you on. This is exciting for me because I think you are the first like true romance writer I've had on the show. Um, I've had people kind of work romance in with other genres, but not
Mhm.
just pure romance. So I'm excited to hear all about the romance writing aspect from a writer's point of view. So I like to start with kind of broad questions and just kind of general things. Who are some of your favorite writers?
Well, let's see. I think this really all started with me just kind of scrolling through Facebook, and I saw an ad for a romance author named Lauren Landish. And that was my first kind of jump into the romance author world. Now, I was 100% completely ignorant. Like my idea of a romance book was, 80s Fabio with like the hair and the dresses,
Yeah,
like the laying over the stone with, like the fancy schmancy, like Victorian era, like, you open up your mother's, like bedside table and oh, like I'm supposed to see this, but I'm not supposed to see this kind of thing. So
yeah.
that was my first like baby toe into the romance world.
The
And from
bodice
there,
rippers,
yes, the
yeah,
bodice
a lot of
rippers.
corsets and
Yes, like
guys with puffy shirts kind of ripped halfway off.
the heaving bosoms and like the throbbing members and like the all of that nonsense. But
Right. Yeah,
mm,
I understand completely. Yes.
so from Lauren Landis, I went to Nicole Snow and Claire Kingsley and let me see, Lucy Score and A.M. Johnson. There are so many fantastic romance authors out there, and all of these are indie romance authors, which means they are self-published. So they did it all themselves, which is
Yeah.
just it's amazing to think that not only did they write everything, but they also published it all themselves without doing traditional publishing, without, you
Yes.
know, uh, sending it off to 1,000 different publishers in the hopes that one of them might pick up the book. They just
Right.
decided to take it on themselves and to just put it out there for the world to see.
Yeah,
Just
and then
such
they're
an
gonna have
inspiration.
their editorial team rip it to pieces, and then they're gonna put
Oh
the
my God,
cover that they want on it, and they're gonna market it how they want it. And
exactly.
right, yeah, KDP has been a
Mhm,
disruptor. Love or hate
mhm,
Amazon, they
yeah,
have allowed writers to get their work out there. So,
yeah,
I'm a fan, 100%.
mhm,
No, that's awesome. I love that true indie writing spirit. And
mhm,
because for a long time, I think the writing has been romanticized. Only certain people can do it. And it's
mhm.
like, no, no, everyone can tell a story. When we tell stories from childhood, we make up stuff. And it does take work, obviously, but it's kind of nice that everyone has an opportunity to put their stuff out there.
No, you're absolutely right. And without Amazon, and you're right, love it or hate it, and you love stuff about Amazon, and then you despise stuff about Amazon. I mean, that just goes without saying for everybody. But without them, I mean, authors like me, truly,
Hmm.
we wouldn't have a chance, because I can tell you that I would not have the mental capacity, the time, the energy to put my work out there, to send it to traditional publishers and then just sit back and twiddle my thumbs and wait. Like
Right.
I wouldn't be able to do that. Like there's not enough Xanax in the world to 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 make me do that. Truly, I
Yeah.
mean, that's not to say that I wouldn't get a response letter back, the very first publisher that I sent it to, or, maybe it's 3 years down the line and 100 rejections later, and I still haven't received something back. You just don't know. But I wasn't willing to take that chance, which, enter
Right.
Amazon. And I never even had to go that route, which is
Right.
wonderful.
Right. And when people like read it, like people you don't know, and
Mhm,
and then they like write nice things,
mhm,
it's amazing feeling,
mhm.
like, oh, someone actually paid money there and they liked it. Okay. It's a
Exactly.
it's a very validating feeling, to
Mhm.
have that. Um, so when you were growing up, what were some of your favorite books to read?
So again, I did not do any romance growing up. So
Hmm.
growing up, like I was Stephen King, 100% Stephen King. I was Peter Benchley. I loved Peter Benchley. So I did um oh goodness, it was the King Arthur and the
Hmm.
Guinevere, like the medieval books. I loved Anne Rice. Just the really anything but romance. That and
Right.
it's so strange that is my genre, and I'm just reluctant to write anything but romance now, because it was something that I never considered reading,
Hmm.
until the last couple of years,
Okay.
truly. Mhm,
Oh, that's interesting. I like that. I think
mhm,
that's part of creativity in a way that I've been a musician for much of my life, and the things I like to listen to are different than the things that I like to play in some ways. Like I like heavy rock and metal, and I've been in quite a few of those bands, but I also I'm happy to play with whatever whatever music style it is, I wouldn't listen to it normally, but I would happy to play it. I think there's something like that. It carries over into writing. Like the stuff we like to read doesn't necessarily always have to be the stuff that we create that we like to write. If that
Mhm.
sounds like it makes sense to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm,
Um, no, I totally get that. My first book was a series was a cozy mystery, and I had never even
mhm,
read one until I started writing. I did research,
mhm,
and it was like antithesis, antithetical to what I normally would write,
mhm,
because I'm more the horror and those, comedy
mhm,
kind of things.
mhm,
But I
mhm,
found it liberating and found it very exciting to work within the confines of this kind of new genre, and still
mhm,
develop these characters that I started caring about. So no, I get that.
mhm.
Um, so what makes a good romance story to you?
That's tough because even within romance, there's so many little niches that you can go. There's so many different directions you can go in romance. But one of one of my favorite things about romance is it's predictable. You know what's going to happen. I mean, like I don't go to Starbucks because I'm looking to change it up and get some sort of like, you know, weird drink that I've never heard of that, has 47 syllables and three different ingredients that I can't even pronounce. I go to Starbucks because I like a white chocolate mocha with skim milk and no whip. Like I want something that's predictable. I want something that I know exactly how it's going to taste. And that's just what I like. And it's the same with romance novels. I like it because it's predictable, because I know what's going to happen. I know that like these characters are going to start either hating each other, or it's going to be like a brother's best friend, or it's going to be like the childhood best friends, or like the boss and the assistant, or and you're gonna you want them to be together, and then like the author's gonna you know make you hate them or make you love them, and then like the author's going to completely rip your heart out, and then like she's going to put it back together for you, and then at the very end, that author is going to bring them together, and it's going to be the happily ever after. So
Right.
I love the predictability of
Sure.
romance, because that and I feel like that, especially in like the pre and now the post COVID, you need that. You need to have the predictability, like something. You need to have like the consistency,
Yes.
and I really like that. I think that's why I gravitated so much towards romance within the last couple of years, because I mean, what's going to happen. I mean, you might like throw the book across the room, and you might like have a temper tantrum, and like be really mad about it, but at the end they're going to be together, and at the end you're going to, everything is going to be okay. You might
Uh,
not like it getting there, but it's all going to be okay at the end.
sure. You have that target goal in mind. Yeah. It's like when you watch a Hallmark movie for the same reason, I do enjoy the occasional Hallmark Christmas movie. And it's like after you've seen two or three, you've seen them all, it's the same
Exactly.
interchangeable formula. But
Mhm.
um, I have a background in popular culture, and part of the study of that is the study of formula and genre. And we like formula within genres because it is comforting. Once we identify what the formula is,
Mhm.
and we kind of have that, that predictability is comforting. Like you had said, it's very reassuring to us. So we
Mhm.
know things are going to work out.
Mhm.
But we still experience all the emotions kind of getting there, because
Exactly.
yes, you kind of summed it up really nicely. All the formula for all like rom-coms is that the two people don't like each other, or most romance
Mhm.
novels, and things
Mhm.
kind of force them together where they do finally express their love, even though they may not want it. They realize they're in love, and then
Exactly.
something splits them apart temporarily, and then they come
Mhm.
back. It would be very different at the end of the story had they not like lived happily ever after. That would be the
Mhm.
controversial end, you
Yes.
know. Because
Yes.
so the formula exists to reassure, to kind of give that continuity, and so no, I
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
So do you find that the experience between reading a romance novel and watching a romance movie any
Mhm.
different as far as as a consumer of the genre?
Definitely, because and I don't like Hallmark movies.
That's fine.
And
Yeah.
you see, that's the thing. Now I do enjoy rom-coms. Like one of my favorites, and I had to say that because I'm gonna. Oh, Love Actually, like that's
Oh
probably
yeah,
one of
yeah.
my
It's a
favorite
you have to watch it
rom
every
coms.
Christmas. It's a Christmas
Oh
movie.
yes, oh
Yeah,
yes, exactly. And I
yeah.
think that that comes down to Alan Rickman, and I'm like the biggest Harry Potter fan on
Okay.
the face of the earth. I have an extremely unhealthy obsession with it that I'm completely aware of.
Okay,
I
good.
embarrass the heck out of my husband and my child, and I embrace that 110%.
At least
But
you own it. Fly that flag
yeah,
proudly. It's
I
like, hey,
do own it
right.
proudly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, exactly. Why not?
Hmm.
Sure.
Hmm. But I'm not like a huge rom-com fan. I feel like I have to be in a mood to watch a rom-com.
Yeah,
You have to have to be in a mood for it. That's not to say that you don't have to be in a mood to watch Pet Cemetery as well.
sure.
But like you have to be in a mood to watch a rom-com. And I'm not normally a rom-com person,
Hmm.
but I can devour a romance book. Like I can neglect my real job to read a romance book that has sucked me in
Sure.
by the end of the first chapter.
Okay.
Truly,
You like the historical romance novels as well? Like when it's set in a particular time period and there's the factual history and as part of the plot?
I do, as long as it's not they don't use a lot of, and I don't want to say historical accuracy because I don't. Let me try. Let me So, when it comes to using a lot of the historical accurate terms, I feel like they need to keep in mind their average reader, because the average reader does not know what a lot of those terms mean. So if I get to the end of the first chapter and they're using a lot of historical accurate terms, but the average reader does not know what that means, and I find myself like having to go to Google to realize that this is a term that means like another word for like a house or
Sure.
a dress or a shoe, like, and
Right.
I'm just going to and from Google, like, listen, that's not going to keep my attention. But if it's something that I can follow along with, and it draws my attention in, then absolutely, I love historical romances as well.
Nice.
But
Nice.
but my favorites still are just contemporary. I love a
Yeah.
good contemporary romance.
Okay.
Mhm,
It's not a genre I'm a fan of, but there are several that stand out. Like you had mentioned, Love Actually is a great movie.
mhm.
The first time you see it, I dare anyone not to cry, at
Oh,
the
oh
end.
my
It's just,
gosh, I know.
yeah. And the
Mhm,
performances are just so good and it's still heartbreaking. I know exactly what's going to happen, but
mhm.
every time I see Liam Neeson and his son talking, that's
Mhm.
just so beautiful and tender.
I
And
know.
that
That
little
father
boy
son
should have
moment.
won like an Oscar. I mean, to go
Oh my gosh.
against with Liam
Yeah.
Neeson to be, share the screen and like and take those scenes,
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
with me,
just a,
it's every time she opens up that present and she sees that Joni Mitchell tape, like
yes,
there is no way. Like and I know what's gonna happen, but
right,
I get watery eyed. Like there's no way that
yeah,
you don't you don't feel
right.
it when it happens.
Then you have to turn over and watch Galaxy Quest so you can see Alan Rickman, by Grabthar's hammer, um one one romantic, well, I guess it is a comedy with romance. It's IQ. Have you heard it with
Oh yes,
oh
with Nick
Tim,
Ryan and yeah,
yeah,
Walter Matthau and the
yeah,
combo. Yes, yes,
yes,
yes,
that's
yes, yes. Tim
brilliant.
Robbins. Yes,
Yeah,
that one. Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
That's just so funny and sweet because, and I love the idea because of Albert Einstein and his pals are there, and just that's what makes the movie for me. I mean, Meg Ryan was, she was, adorable, and that was her peak era. For she was in everywhere. She was like the cute girl next door kind of thing.
Yes,
And
yes.
Tim Robbins just plays that kind of low key, bashful kind of guy so
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
That's about the only one I'll watch because I like the performances, and there's so much more than just the romance going on that I enjoy. But
Hmm.
um, so you had mentioned earlier that you didn't really want to write in any genres. Had you thought about writing like different genres at all, or is it by thinking about them you said no, that's not for me, or is it just something like nope, romance is the only thing I want to do?
Well, yes. So I just recently branched out, and like I'm completely on pins and needles waiting to hear about it. So you had mentioned music. So probably my favorite performer hands down is Alice Cooper. Like I mean,
Yes.
just absolutely love Alice Cooper. I mean, we took our gosh, at that point in time she was 6. We took our 6-year-old to meet Alice
Oh,
Cooper. I mean, like
nice.
absolutely loved it. She got to meet Alice, she got to meet Nina. Like it was just a fantastic concert. But I mean, my husband and I have seen him so many Send Me Time. He's fantastic. But so I was just searching Facebook looking for anthologies to be a part of, because that's, I mean, that's a great way for authors to hook new readers, is to just become a part of different anthologies,
Mhm.
and to just put short stories out there, for the world to consume. And I stumbled across an Alice Cooper anthology, and
Oh,
it is right, and it is something that's going to benefit his nonprofit, which is something that goes to keep music in schools.
yeah.
And this is a an anthology that, and you write a short story that is based on one of his songs.
Oh,
you know,
nice. Okay.
right? And you can choose anything. And of course, they said now, obviously, you can choose, School's Out for Summer, you can choose Poison. But I mean, that would be what the
Right.
majority of people would choose. So you would
Sure.
want to do something more obscure. I mean, that just goes without saying. But because of the amount of interest in the anthology, it's something that you have to apply for. Some anthologies you can just pay a little bit, or you can just throw your hat in the ring and you automatically get accepted. Others you have to apply for. This particular one, I did have to submit a story for, and within the next week or two, I should be receiving back either yes, you're in, or the thank you very much for your submission. But that was my first attempt at doing anything besides romance, and it was, of course, horror. And it
Okay.
wasn't, yes, and it wasn't just like paranormal. Like
Yeah.
it's straight horror. So
Nice. Nice. Okay. So what song, or are you allowed to say what song did you
no,
base it
no,
off of?
totally say so. I did Cold Ethel.
I was gonna get around because Cold Ethel. I thought, well, that's just, you gotta do that one. I mean, as much as I love Billion Dollar Babies, it's not much for the song horror story in there. But Cold
Yes.
Ethel is just like, oh,
Mhm,
necrophilia. Come on, you can't get much more
mhm.
disturbing than necrophilia, you know?
Exactly. And of course, and those were the two things that she said. She said, obviously, you can't do that, because she said you can't do gratuitous violence just to do gratuitous violence. And you can't do, necrophilia just because she wanted to draw the line at some point in time. Because I mean, if you
Okay.
if you know anything about, Alice in real life,
Hmm.
like he teaches Sunday school, and
Yeah,
like
he's
he's
playing
completely
he's playing a
sober, and like,
character. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And like
he's
him
a
and
he's
Daryl,
such
like
a great guy.
they're like really good people. So I mean, he completely embraces the character, but he also does draw the line at some point in time, which I
Right.
completely understand. So like my take on Cold Ethel was, well, I mean, I don't want to
Yeah, no,
completely
yeah,
give it away, of course.
don't want to give it
Yes,
all away.
yes, but it was not necrophilic, obviously, but it was definitely the mad doctor and the the wife in the freezer kind
Okay.
of thing. So
No, that's awesome.
mhm,
Regardless, one way or another, I would like to read that story. So sometime, someday, whenever if it gets published, I'll read it there. But if not,
mhm.
I'd love to read that sometime. That's just too delicious of not to want to try, you know?
Right? Like I couldn't not do it. I
Yeah.
mean, regardless if they respond back and say, "Listen, you need to stick with romance." I mean, I'd be like completely fine. Or if they
Right.
said, "This is fantastic." Either way, there was no way that I could not throw my hat in the ring for
Sure.
Alice Cooper. I mean,
Right. I
true.
mean, what I mean, and then if you do get in, like, how cool is that? Because, maybe you'll get a signed copy with his autograph or something. You never know.
Or I mean, if,
Um,
if nothing else, like the next time we go and see him in concert, I'm going to be like, "Hey, listen."
hey, this is my
So,
story. Right. No, that would be awesome. Definitely definitely worth it. The
mhm,
chance, the shot. Why
mhm,
not? No,
mhm,
no, that's cool. I do a few other podcasts, and one is called Heavy Metal Horror, where we
mhm,
talk horror movies and interview rock stars.
mhm,
And I have yet to get Alice on. I've asked him. We've been turned down because we're small potatoes. But
mhm,
I would love to talk with Alice. Just because, and I have Alice stories. My grandpa, when I was younger, my grandpa and grandma would fly out to Arizona in the wintertime.
mhm,
And Alex lives out in Arizona. So they're on the flight, and my with Alice Cooper sitting next to my grandpa. Now,
mhm,
my grandpa didn't know anything about Alice. I had no idea who
mhm,
this guy was. But my
mhm.
grandpa was kind of like Archie Bunker and Fred Sanford put together, kind of like a bigoted junk dealer. So in the best way possible. And so I'm just imagining him like trying to sell him stuff, on the plane, like, oh, I got these extra combs. You need a comb, you know? And it was like afterwards when I heard the story, like, yeah, hey,
Mhm.
Mark, I met this guy you might know. He had a funny name. His name was Alice Cooper. He said it was, I'm like, Grandpa,
Oh,
oh my God. So
like what? So like what?
yeah, I go, Grandpa, he hangs like, hangs people on stage and he cuts his own head off, And he just said how nice he was and pleasant. Like he was just enduring my grandpa, who was a talker. And
Mhm.
so and I was in college at the time, and so I wrote a song about it for one of the bands I was in. My grandpa met Alice
Mhm.
Cooper, because it was just the absurdity of it, like waiting for my grandpa to start donning like black eye makeup. That would have been awesome.
That's
But
amazing. I remember when we took our daughter to see him. So I had ordered an Alice Cooper patch from eBay or Amazon or something, and then like a black bow, and I had super glued the patch on the bow and put it in her hair. And when we got to meet him afterwards, I mean it was amazing. Of course, everybody couldn't believe that we were like the cool parents because we took our 6-year-old to see
sure,
Alice
sure.
Cooper. So she got to go up and meet him first. And I mean, like, he spent several minutes with her. And I mean, like, he bent down and listened to her. And I mean, she was listing off her song. She's like, so, poison is my one. And like, she was counting it. And he was asking her why and asking her questions about it. And I mean, like, and we had
Wow.
several, I mean, it was just amazing. And well, I mean, she's only 8. So, I mean, it wasn't like
Yeah,
terribly long ago, but I mean, like, she still talks about it. I mean, and the fact that he took the time to do that,
yeah.
I mean, just truly amazing. And then the stage manager, because we actually that was back when before Nina
Hmm.
Strauss left,
Hmm.
she was still in the band too. The stage manager knew how much she loved Nita, so we actually got to go to her dressing room and meet her as well. So
Oh,
Emily have a
wow.
picture, yeah, a picture
That
with
is
her.
awesome.
Yes, yes, and now she's taking guitar lessons, which is
Cool. The next
yes, it's
generation.
fantastic. Yes,
Nice.
yes, yeah, it's fantastic. It's great. So she's really and she's good. It's very exciting
See,
to.
I love that. It's so very scary to meet your heroes. We've talked a lot about this on Heavy Metal Horror. That we've had some episodes where we talk about that, and even when we interview these rock stars, everyone is a fan of somebody else. So we ask them like, "Have you ever met any of your heroes, and what that was that like?" And sometimes they have great stories to tell, and sometimes they're like, "Yeah, this guy was an asshole," or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just kind of heartbreaking. Because you never think about them the same way. So it's always risky, but I'm so glad it
Mhm.
was such a positive experience.
Oh, it
And
was. It really was for
that's
her.
fantastic. So
Mhm.
all right, I'm gonna
Mhm.
gear back around to
Oh yeah,
writing for
yeah.
you.
Circle
So
back.
yeah, come back.
Circle back to both.
Um, so what made you first want to write?
Oh, this well. So I've according to my parents, this is something that I've done my entire life. So my both of them said that I've always written. In fact, when I was in middle school, I wrote a book. Uh, nothing serious, but it was a decent sized book. My mother still has it somewhere in the house. She hasn't given it to me, probably because she knows I would cringe, and it would disappear somewhere and she would never see it again, and she would not be able to bring it out when I turned 50 and embarrass the bejeebies out of me. But so it's something that I've always been interested in, but truly it's never something that I even thought about pursuing until COVID. And it was really, really funny how it started. And this is a hilarious story. So it started because I had a dream about my boss, and it wasn't even a smexy dream. It wasn't. So I I I work at a bank, and I found out that my boss, who was 6 something, 3-piece suit with the little vest and the little pocket watch and the little, like, I have to leave early on Thursday to take my son to soccer practice, is in a grunge band.
Oh, nice.
And I just thought, right. And I just thought that was the funniest thing in the whole world, that my boss was in a grunge band. So I happened to have a random dream about it, and then like I had another dream about it and another dream, and it just kept building and building and building. And I'd mentioned it to my husband, and I'd mentioned it to like my mother, and I couldn't get it out of my head. So then
He wasn't threatened by all these dreams about your band manager boss. So that's good.
Well, I was like,
Do we
"Listen,
need to
it's
see a
not that kind
counselor
of
here?
dream." Yeah, no, I was almost like, "It's not that kind of dream, I promise." But, lo and behold, it turned into a book, then the book turned into one of those kind of books, so, I mean, but anyway, so then COVID started and, we were stuck in the house and, that was when our little one had started kindergarten, so she was in the house and I was in the house and he was in the house and everybody was kind of going crazy. So
Gotta
I
have an
needed
escape.
yeah, exactly. So we all needed a change of pace. So I had actually just started going to my mother's house a couple days a week, just, so somebody was out of the house just so we, we're not going crazy. And I had just jokingly mentioned to my mother that I was still having this dream. And it was funny after this many months that it was still going on. And I said that I was actually trying to write a little bit of it down just to, get out of my head. But of course, I couldn't write it down on my work computer because that was just weird. And and I said, and I'm not writing it down on my phone because, again, I'm not writing it with my thumbs because,
Yes, right.
not,
You're like a
not doing
normal
it.
person, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and it was just a couple of days before that, she had upgraded her laptop. So she handed me her old one and she's just here, just use this. So there we go. And that was the end. So then 1,000 words turned into 5,000 words and 5,000 turned into 10, 10 turned into 20. And then when that happened, I was like, oh, this might, this might be something. So then, I got onto Amazon or excuse me, I got onto Facebook and I started, you know, Googling, or excuse me, I got onto Facebook and just started searching, you know, author groups and publishing and, editing. And it just, couldn't get over how not easy it seemed, but how attainable the goal seemed to be. And I guess the rest is kind of history,
Yeah.
sort of.
No, that's awesome. Interesting
Mhm.
how we get that spark to start writing. And it wasn't a grand plan of yours, just the
Yeah.
idea of writing to get out, and then you realize you have so much more to say, you
Yeah,
know?
but it truly just started as an outlet. I mean, well, it
Hmm.
just started as a way for me to stop dreaming about my boss because after a while it's just weird.
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
Yeah.
seriously. I mean, it's truly
Yeah.
just weird. But I mean, and then it just became my outlet. It became my way of dealing with COVID, with being in the house all the time. And now we are back to the office part-time at least, but now it's still my escape. It's still
Hmm.
my creative outlet, my I feel like there's still so much more.
Oh,
One
sure.
series, yeah, one series is now turned into the second one, and I can't wait to see where that leads. It's
That's awesome.
mhm,
Um, let's talk a
mhm,
little bit about world building.
mhm.
Okay, so how do you go about designing your world that your characters live in?
Well, I think the most important thing for me is writing about what you know. Uh, I and especially with not having any formal writing training. I work in banking and I went to college as a to be a teacher. Actually, I mean, completely random thing. So not having the background, I felt like I needed to write about what I know. So I'm in South Carolina, and the books are based in Charleston. An area that I'm very familiar with, that I've traveled to multiple times, so I can write confidently about the area, about the people, about the dialect, with them without having to Google a lot of things. I can write about it with accuracy, and it's the same with the professions. So the characters in the book, one of them is a assistant at a bank. I am very confident about that role. The other is she is a doctor, a veterinarian. I'm very familiar with that role till I have a friend who works in a clinic. So that's the most important thing to me, is write about things that I feel like that you can have a better grasp on that, as opposed to Googling. Not that I haven't, researched a ton, especially for one of my roles. One of them is a police officer. Well, then again, my neighbor is also a police officer too. So I feel like that between Google and, the random knock on the door, hey, so
Right. No, no, it's good. Yeah, writing what you know.
mhm,
No, you have to start somewhere, It's unless you're especially in a romance where that seems to be grounded in reality,
Mhm.
and if you can write those details um, without having to worry about trying to without worrying about whether you're accurate or not because you know it, then it just
Mhm.
takes the pressure off of you. You can just
Yeah.
write what you know, and then it's going to
Mhm.
seem like it's a real thing anyway.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sure.
Mhm. Because
Okay.
there is some, I don't want to say, what am I trying to say? Like stuff that is, I don't want to say far-fetched because that's not the right word, but stuff that is, like the insta lust, the stuff that is a little bit harder to believe in romance than it is in
Yeah.
real life. Like the immediate sexual chemistry, like the first time they're together and it's like the fireworks, and like the first time the fingers touch and it's just like sparks fly and dance and this, that, and the other. So
Yeah.
to have it grounded more in everyday reality, it makes those sort of things more realistic, when you have the instant chemistry and the insta lust and those sort of things, I
Yeah.
found.
Because it doesn't
you know
happen all the time, thankfully, right?
exactly. Yeah.
It'd be
Yeah.
exhausting if it did.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, no, that makes perfect sense. And it does
Mhm.
happen from time to time. You
Mhm.
can't help who you're attracted to. It's just one of those things. Now, whether they're attracted to you back is a whole different ball of wax. But
Mhm.
it, no, that's good. That's good because that's the fantasy element is the romance. Romance is fantasized. It's
Yes.
that we even use the
Mhm.
word romanticized to talk about fantasy,
Mhm.
so when we build something up, um, so it is an escape. It is that fantasy, but so to have those pieces of reality in there,
Mhm.
do make the story seem more likely or possible, I think.
Mhm.
And I think that's
Mhm.
part of the genre is what people read as opposed to science fiction or horror is that you don't necessarily want to be in a horror story.
Mhm.
You really don't want these things happening to you, but with a
Mhm.
romance there's always that what if possibility or remembering something or somebody or like looking for the next relationship or possibility of one, and that always is kind of, I think, in our minds anyway. So it's part of the invitation, I think, if you're going to read that genre. Is like you kind of it's easy to put yourself in the position of the characters.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
So since you've kind of developed the world around Charleston, you've added things to it, or is it definitely based in Charleston, South Carolina, or is it a fictional uh, Charleston?
No, no, it's definitely based in Charleston, South
Okay.
Carolina. So I've used real places, I've used real restaurants. So if I have embellished any areas, so I have, like, I did makeup and hotel, because I wanted to make, like the streets bigger and the areas bigger around the hotel, and I didn't want to uh not represent, any of the hotels there
Hmm.
incorrectly,
Sure.
just because that obviously wouldn't be a fair representation to them. So I did create fictional places within Charleston, but any place that I used a real name for, I represented it accurately.
Okay.
Mhm.
That makes
Mhm.
sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
I use the town in which I grew up in as the basis for my cozy mystery town. It's a different
Mhm.
name, and all the places are differently
Mhm.
named, but the locations of them are all the same. Like when I envision downtown where I grew up in a town called Vermilion, so I'm
Mhm.
not right on the Lake Erie, and so it has a connection to water and fishing and all those things. But growing up there my whole life, I had all these memories of places, and so my character has all those same memories, because they're mine, and that just made it those little details about bringing up parts of my past there, memories I had, make people who didn't grow up in Vermilion, they look at this as like small town memories that could apply to anyone, anywhere, which is kind of
Mhm.
nice. But the people who did grow
Mhm.
up in Vermilion, um, when they read these, like, oh, I know where this place is. It's a different name, but I know the pizza place you're talking about, Mark. So,
Mhm.
which is also kind of fun because then they start like looking at other places or characters, like, oh,
Mhm.
who's this character based off of? And they begin doing that kind of game, like, which is
Mhm.
kind of fun as well. But speaking
Mhm.
of your characters,
Mhm.
you've based some of them on things that you've done and that but how do you go
Mhm.
about creating and developing your characters?
That's that's I don't know. That I mean, with it was, I hate just sitting here thinking
No,
with the
it's okay.
silence.
No, it's fine.
No, so with the characters for my trilogy, I kind of started with the base dream that I had, and I knew it was going to be a boss and an assistant, and I wanted it to circle around the female. And I thought, all right, well, if it's going to be one girl, let's make it a group of girls. And then I thought, well, the how many books did I want it to be? And I was thinking, well, let's make it a trilogy. And then I wanted to say, well, why don't we have one of them married? So let's do a group of 4 girls. And then I started with occupations, and I came up with the occupations. And then I thought of names that could potentially go with the different occupations, first and last names. And honestly, I did kind of base them on a couple of friends that I had that were in similar occupations, truly. And then kind of went from there. And then I built the details around the occupations and the areas, and kind of built the character profiles.
Okay.
But I kind of used that with what I knew, but it wasn't a perfect process,
Sure.
and I changed a couple of the names like halfway through the book. So I was like, wait, I don't really like this, or this doesn't work, or
Right.
like I knew that I wanted this character to have a double name because they were from the South, but I didn't want it to be like a traditional double name. I wanted it to be a uniquer one. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's a normal organic part of the creative process.
Mhm.
We have ideas and we start with them, and over time they change and they can
Mhm.
adapt, and that's perfectly fine. I guess normal, and that's how we process a lot of things. The act of creating allows our brain to process,
Exactly.
and we're just trying to
Mhm.
find our way to get to a point where we can see a rough shape first.
Mhm.
And that shape is completely malleable until we turn our final draft in, um, so which of your characters would you most like to have a drink with?
Ooh, I would have to say that would be the most recent guy. Well, excuse me. All right. So the very last book that I wrote, full length book, that was One Little Victory, and the hero that I wrote, Simon. So Simon Kelly. That was the most favorite guy that I've written so far. And I would love to have a drink with him because he's very pretentious. He's the kind of guy that, like, he gets mad at you if you don't let him be a complete gentleman to you. Like, he actually got mad at the heroine because she opened her own door.
Okay.
Like, and he got like pissed off at her because he's
Okay.
seriously, I could have done that for you, and she's
Right.
just,
He's
and I
uber
could.
Southern gentleman.
Yes,
Yes.
uber Southern gentleman. Yes,
Nice.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And I would love to have a drink with him just to completely get into his head more, but also just to needle him because he just seems like one of the ones that you would just love to push his buttons just
I,
just to see.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. So what would be the first question you'd ask him while you're having a drink?
Oh, that would be tough. Hmm. Probably because he's the kind of guy that would like stand in front of the mirror trying to get his hair that perfect way to where it looks messy, but it takes him like a half hour to get that like messy look.
Okay.
So I would like deadpan, how long did it take you to get your hair look like that? Because we wouldn't be able to continue to have this conversation if it took you longer than 15 minutes, because that's how long it took me to get my hair
Oh,
ready. Or like
that's
something
right.
very kind of like flirty, passive aggressive, like, and then, offer to buy the drink, or like that would be my opening, like my opening.
Nice. Okay. No, no, that's great. That's great. Um, yeah, when I came up with that question, I thought, because I'd never always thought about my characters. Like there's some characters when you write,
Mhm.
you really gravitate toward, like minor characters in my cozy, some
Mhm.
are some of my favorite characters. And there's one who's like the last character I created. He's like the nosy, like newspaper guy. You gotta have a guy who's just, and he's a button pusher. He's always
Mhm.
dressing sloppily and like wearing a yellow shirt, but everyone knows what day of the week it is because his yellow shirt will have stains in different places. So he has, oh, it's the stains over the pocket. Must be Tuesday or whatever. But he's just like a loudmouth, kind of a cad, and doesn't
Mhm,
care about anybody's feelings.
mhm,
And I just love that. Like it just kind of came out of the blue. Like once I didn't know about him, I just knew what he looked like. And as soon as I started writing his words, like, oh, I know this guy. He's a button pusher. I like this guy.
mhm,
So and other characters, like even the main character, because it's a combination of just complete fiction and my memories. It's like I don't care about Abby too much. I just because I don't know because it's just weird. It's like she's
mhm,
carrying the books. It's the story. It's her story. But there are a lot more characters I would rather spend time with, if that
mhm,
makes any sense at all.
mhm, mhm,
Um, no, but that's good.
mhm,
Let's talk a little about creativity and organization.
mhm.
I read on your Instagram page you are a proud pantser.
I am.
Um, as a
Mhm,
plotter, the thought of
mhm,
writing a book without any organization makes my brain whirl. It's just like fills me with anxiety. Um,
mhm,
so have you tried plotting, or did that drive you to pantsing, or do you just
mhm,
because well the way you started your first book, you just started writing. Is that just
mhm,
how you continue with your creativity? You just go with a general idea and see where it
mhm.
goes?
Well, you see, mine was the exact opposite of yours. Is I sat down and I tried to plot, and I got horrible anxiety from it.
Oh,
Because I would sit down and I would know, of course, how I wanted it to start, and I would know how I wanted it to end, and the middle, and I would get horrific anxiety. Like, well, I mean, what's supposed to happen here, and what's supposed to happen in chapter one, and it just, I mean, terribly. And then I would say, well, oh my gosh, well, I talked to my editor and I told her that I would have this to her by February, but now it's been 3 weeks and I haven't plotted anything, and now I'm gonna have to push the deadline. And if I do this, then I'm gonna and I would just start spiraling,
okay.
and I realized I couldn't do that. So what happened with me is I would get an idea for a so I have to start with the title, and I like to have the title first. That's just my process. Regardless if I decide to change the title or not, I like to have the title first because I feel like that to me makes the story real. And I could change the title 12 times, but I need to have that first. And then I at least want to figure out how I start the story. And then once that happens, once I at least have the first two chapters started, which would be, like the first point of view from the guy and the first point of view from the girl, depending on how the series starts. So the first series started with the girls, the Southern Charms, so the girls' point of view was first. The second series is going to be the guys' series, so like the guy point of view is first. So once I have the first and the second chapter at least bullet pointed, if not actually started, then I can start either bullet pointing chapters or throwing stuff in there. So to me, it's really a mixture of both, but I just cannot sit and plot. Like I can't
Yeah.
sit there like a broad outline.
Hmm.
So I mean, yesterday, coincidentally, it was yesterday around lunchtime. I was doing something. I truly don't even remember what I was doing, but I got a really good idea for how this couple was going to have their first kiss, and it was just a line that kind of popped into my head where they were arguing in the break room of their work, and finally when they're and during the argument his eyes just keep flicking down to her lips, so they're arguing and he just keeps staring at her, and then she just says something like, she scoffs at him, and then she says, I'm sick and tired of this. If you do not kiss me right, or if you don't it what did she say? I probably have to pull up my thing, but it's like, if you don't stop staring at my lips and kiss me, then I will never forgive you. Like, and he just, he grabs her and he kisses her, and like it's kind of like where it's aggressive but still sweet. And that line popped into my head, so I just immediately wrote it, and it was like 1,500 words, and I just kind of shoved it in there in chapter like 5 or 6 or wherever it was. But it's just because that line popped into my head from out of nowhere,
Yeah.
truly.
Right.
But
Right.
like, and I wasn't going to let that go because I hadn't got to their first kiss yet. But I just thought that was because of the particular dynamic that those two had, which is kind of like the push pull. I like you, but I don't like you. And I'm definitely not going to admit that I like you. I'm going to argue with you instead.
Right.
But like
That,
I knew that this was the kind of dynamic that they had. I knew this was going to be a really good way for them to have their first kiss. I'm going to write it, I'm going to throw it here, and then I'm going to work it in later.
No, that's awesome. That's great. So you strike when the inspiration hits, you know.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, most of my professional life has been in academia, so I taught composition. I'm teaching in composition. Um, so I'm all about like planning, like because academic writing demands a lot of planning and forethought and organization and
mhm,
structure. And so, but I've carried that over into my fiction as well. Like I too like to start with a title.
mhm,
Sometimes the title doesn't take a while, maybe in, but sometimes it comes in a flash beforehand, like, okay, and it sets the tone. But being a planner and a plotter, I write down all the ideas I can, and then I don't know where they're going to fit in yet. And that's when I start doing the organization, like the creative process. I get all the ideas, and then I start like looking at like, okay, how do I structure the story? Once kind of major elements of the story take place, they fall into place. Then I find the connective tissue. What do we need to something between these two acts? What would be nice
mhm,
here? Or how do I insert these characters? Or, you know, and so this is why I love this show so much, is because talking with other writers and talking about creative process, because it's so different from writer to writer. I mean, we all start with an idea back here and we all end up with a finished product up here,
yep,
but how we
mhm,
get here, it's everyone's so different, and I find that fascinating, you
mhm,
know. And the fact that
mhm,
you get anxious about things that make me very comfortable as a writer, my current work, it's the second in the Cozy series. I got a 26-page outline, color
mhm,
coded, because I want to see the mystery parts and what are the cozy parts and character development, So for me,
mhm,
that gives me great comfort because I still have to get from point A to point B creatively. You
mhm,
still have to lay down the sentences and the dialogue. It's my roadmap where it gives me great security so that if I do kind of go off on a tangent, I'm not worried about it. I know where I'm
mhm,
going eventually,
mhm,
and you're I like your hybrid idea, because I've met other writers who just said, I just start with an idea, I have no idea what's going to happen, and
mhm.
they just start going. They don't know the characters yet, they have no nothing. I'm like, oh, it's just like, I don't know how you do that, so
I
that's
think
great.
that would definitely cause me a little bit of stress. Like I remember actually with One Little Victory, that one started with the Dark Knight. Like really that one started with, I know how these guys are gonna like break up. Like I know what their big fight is gonna be. And I had to work backwards. And that one was really hard because I had never worked backwards before, you know. But I mean, and once I have like the first two chapters, I can bullet point, and some of my chapters are just okay. I know what's going to happen here. Like this one, they're going to have a confrontation. This one, they're going to, something fun's going to happen. This one, I need to really amp up the sexual tension here. Like, so
Okay.
I can at least do some basic outlines, or like if I have a decent scene, like I can throw the scene into this chapter, like, or I
Yeah.
know there needs to be a transition here. This needs to be where like the push pull happens, but
Yeah.
it's definitely not as detailed as yours, because that would be that would cause me that would cause me a lot of stress. Or actually, it would be great if I could do that, because I feel
Mhm.
like it would help a lot more. I'm sure my editor would appreciate me being that like on point, but I would that would.
Well, and it happens over time. I mean,
Mhm,
the ideas come in no order at all, just
mhm,
like they get the basic story, like,
mhm,
here's my 3-sentence summary of the whole plot.
right.
And then just certain things happen, like, oh, this would be a great mystery element. Oh, I think this would be really nice. And then I have all this, like, it's like all these puzzle pieces laying on the floor, but I have no idea what the puzzle's gonna, like, where they're necessarily gonna go. They're all like squares.
Mhm,
I can arrange them any way I want to change the picture of the puzzle, but it
mhm,
just takes time. And sometimes in the middle of drafting, I'll look at my outline. I'm like, this doesn't work right here.
yeah.
I'll move it around, and so it's still kind of a living document. But no, that's fascinating, because the longer the novel, and my cozies are quite long for a cozy. Um, I want more of the outline. But my pulp stuff, it's relatively short. 40,
Mhm,
50,000 words.
mhm,
So the outline may be 6 pages. But it's still and some of that is like dialogue. Like I'll just get flashes of dialogue or scenes, and I'll just like write them
Mhm,
down, like you
mhm.
have, and then I just know I want to have this line. Like I got to have this line somewhere. Where it goes yet, I
Yeah.
don't know, but I know it's
Mhm,
going to go in the book. So no, I love that.
mhm,
So
mhm,
we talked a little bit about your perfectionism. So
mhm.
do you think your perfectionism or sense of perfectionism, does that affect, how does that affect your writing? Is it, is that why you're worried about the outlining, or you said you worry and obsess about every little thing? Um, so how does that come into play in your like everyday drafting, writing, creating?
It that comes into play because it's very hard for me to let the draft go. It's very hard for me to send it to my alpha, send it to my betas, and send it to my editor because I feel like it's never good enough for me to send it away to anybody else. And especially being a an indie author and not a traditionally published author. I mean, indie authors are not rolling in funds to be able to do everything, because we do everything ourselves. So that means we pay for, I mean, this, we pay for everything up front. It's not something that a traditional publisher pays for and then takes, a portion of the profits, so one of the, and this, the things that you have to do with indie publishing is you have to have good editing, you have to have a good cover. I mean, otherwise the book's just it's not going to sell. I mean, it's just not. And editing is an investment. You have to have a good editor. You do. I mean, and luckily I've been blessed. I've had two fantastic editors. But I mean, stuff's going to get missed. It's always going to get missed.
It
And I mean,
is.
and with Amazon, one of the horrid things with Amazon is readers have the option to let Amazon know if there's mistakes. And
Yeah.
if enough readers do that, then Amazon will pull your book.
Oh,
So it's
I
horrifying
didn't know
to
that.
think, yeah, yeah,
I usually
it's
just get an
horrifying.
email saying, "Hey, Mark, you missed
Yeah.
something." Because
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I'm my own editor, but I because I taught composition for a long time, so I'm
Yes, yes.
comfortable in
Well,
that role.
yeah, in
But
your situation, you're.
it's
Mhm,
still, you get too close to it. I still have a circle of writers who I trust my work to because I know they'll be honest with me. Like we're all good friends,
mhm,
so that they're
mhm,
winning. They have no reason to not be honest, and they want my success as much as I do. So I trust them. Look at,
mhm.
and they have different abilities and skills, and then some are just readers who are like longtime friends who are actually fans of my work, which is really great. But
Mhm.
they are good at like finding like the typos and things. Or
Yeah.
after a while, like you just see the same thing, your brain fills in all the gaps.
Yes,
You know what you're
exactly.
trying to say. So
Yep.
I feel very fortunate that I have my beta readers, a group of about 6 or 8 people who I trust. Like they will find the mistakes, they will
Yeah.
point out plot errors, they will say, this is
Mhm,
working, but this sucks. So
mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
we all need those people in our lives to help because we can't just do it by ourselves. I agree.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Um, well, let's talk a little bit about your writing process. And even though you kind of talked a little bit about that, but is there a part of the writing process that you like the most?
Hmm. I'm in that part right now. It's where the ideas are free flowing, because I think that the it's when I'm still threading everything together. I'm making everything cohesive when I'm tying the story, I'm developing the characters, I'm making it flow. It's before I get into the nitty gritty, before I get into the I've read this 97,000 times and I'm going to gouge my eyeballs out with an ice pick, if I have to read this scene again, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
This is when it's fun, it's exciting, I'm in love with these characters. This is going to be, the when you first start writing, you first start drafting it. This is my favorite time.
It's like early dating versus,
Yeah,
long time
yes,
relationships. Like,
early dating versus marriage. Yes,
yeah,
not that it's like
right,
it's yes,
right.
yes.
And we don't want to say anything disparaging,
Yeah.
but it's the truth. That's right. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Like I said, I hit a wall at 3/4 of the way through a book, no matter what book I'm on. It's just like, because I know how it's going to end. I've told it a
Mhm.
thousand times in my brain, and
Yep.
I feel like I'm in a marathon. Like my legs are churning, my fingers are going, they're numb. It's like I know my body is working. I'm just forcing my fingers to type the
Yeah.
words to get me to the end of the story,
Mhm.
and I hit that about three-quarters the way, because usually by then, like the next book is like, hey, I think it's time you start thinking about
Yeah.
me. I'm like,
Yeah.
shut up. I got to finish this one first.
It's the little voices start in your head, the next characters. They're like,
Yeah,
hey, what's going on?"
right.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
write multi-genres. I don't stick with one.
Mhm.
So, um, I mean, the book I did, my first one to go on the extreme, was a cozy mystery. It's so sweet and light. And the next one was a splatter Western. So I just didn't want to be pigeonholed into a corner, that,
Mhm.
like I just imagine Kathy Bates and, Sledgehammer and hobbling me, making me write cozy mysteries the rest of my life. I didn't want that. Um, so like, no, 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 I'm going to write all kinds of things. So,
Mhm.
when was it that you first came to realize what your writer voice was? Or are you
Mm.
still discovering that?
No, I think I'm still discovering what my writing voice is. I think it's something that's gonna keep I'm gonna keep developing it. Because truly I've written 3 full lengths and then 2 novellas. So I think it's something that I'm gonna keep honing, for a while, probably at least until the next series of 3 books are done.
Hmm.
And then I have a couple of anthologies I'm gonna be participating in
Do you
next
find it?
year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no,
Oh,
no, that's what I was gonna say. So I think that there's still going to be times. And one of the anthologies is actually for a book signing that I'm going to be doing in Wilmington, North Carolina. And it's going to uh, be uh, like a haunted. The book
oh,
signing is
nice.
called Haunted in Wilmington. So it's
Nice.
actually going to be a spin-off of or the characters from the Southern Charms story, but they're going to be doing like a haunted ghost tour in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh,
So,
how
so it is,
fun.
it is going to be like, it's going to be humorous, but it's not going to be like smutty romance. It's
Sure.
going to be like humorous, funny, haunted. So
Oh,
like
I
I
love
am,
that.
yeah. So I am going to try to branch out a little bit more. So I'm because I don't want to completely limit myself to 100% romance if
Right.
I can. And that's not to say that I'm going to do something like, Omega Verse or like paranormal, but I don't
Hmm.
want to completely limit myself to just this niche. Should the
Yeah,
opportunity prevent itself or present itself.
sure. Do you,
Mhm.
f- I'm wondering now, when you were writing your horror story, did you find that your voice was different than your romance novels? Like with the way you told the story, like you were triggering something, because it has to change. Like,
Mhm.
going from the cozy to a splatter Western to a pulp horror, for, what I was writing, and
Mhm.
nonfiction in there as well.
Mhm.
Every book is a little different. Like it's still you, but it's a different part of your writing muscles, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, I felt the horror one. It was much more descriptive, much more than anything in the romance genre.
Hmm.
Uh, and it was I oh gosh, what did I write? Or what did I watch on TV? The Quentin Tarantino. The Oh my
Reservoir Dogs,
goodness.
Pulp Fiction,
No, 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 no,
Django
no, no.
Unchained,
Uh
Hateful Eight,
no, no, no.
Death
The
Proof.
one. Yeah. Oh, was that? Yeah, it's Death Proof. It was
Yeah,
the one that was like the
Kurt
Rose
Russell was a
McGowan with the gun
yes,
on her
yeah,
leg.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh no,
yes,
that
yes, yes,
was,
yes, yes.
yeah, Death Proof. Yeah, that was the Robert Rodriguez. That was
Yeah.
Planet Terror, and then his was the
Yes,
Death
yes, yes,
Proof.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very. I excuse me. I apologize. That's kind of what I channeled for that one. Like very descriptive, very gritty.
Okay,
You
sure.
know. Hmm.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Right. The going into, like, every book has been a little different, but going from the cozy to the splatter Western, like I will always look at Gage Black as my favorite book, because for the first time, I felt completely unfettered by audience expectation. I didn't even know there was a genre called splatter Western until I had had written the book and put it out there, and people were reading
Hmm.
it going, "Oh, this is a splatter Western." I'm like, "Oh, it was just a violent tale
Hmm.
of revenge." That's all I was writing.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I felt free and like completely unfettered. And that was an amazing feeling, like, okay,
Hmm.
finally just pulled back and just let nothing but it spill out onto the page, not worried about anyone's feelings, anything. Like, look,
Mhm,
this is NC-17,
mhm.
this is hardcore graphic
Yeah.
violence, you know? Um, but it felt really good to write. But when I go back into my cozy, it's a completely different like mindset. Like I'm in the character's head. I mean, romances are told from, it's internal. There you have a lot of internal
Yes.
monologue. And so to go back into and telling this story, filtering it through everything through this character's experiences, it was a complete, and knowing that my audience is not going to want to read the words I said in Gage Black, I have to really, it puts me in a different place emotionally when I write it, you know? So I don't know if you experienced that when you were writing your horror, like, did you feel
Yes.
differently emotionally?
Yeah. I did. I felt very different emotionally, and to the point where I was considering that if I get accepted into this anthology, if I needed to come up with a different pen name, if I needed to
Oh,
separate myself from the romance genre because of this. And that's not to say that I wouldn't keep the cat long, but it would be like cat long writing as something something,
oh, really?
and
Huh.
because of how different my voice is, because of how different the connection is, how different I felt emotionally writing everything, and how, because when it comes to the romance, I consider it to be very like light, fluffy, smutty, like very, very like beach read. Like it's not, I don't want to say it's not deep, but it's not, it's very light,
Sure.
and like the horror that
It,
was, I mean, that's deep. That's like, that's
it's less
hardcore.
demanding. The horror is more
Yeah.
demanding of the reader. Do
Yes,
you
exactly. Like you have to be, I mean, that one,
so you're just
yeah.
rebranding yourself then in a way, like you're
Mhm,
repackaging the writer. So I know
mhm.
other writers who do the same.
Mhm,
I've I'm happy to put my name on every book I write. It doesn't change because I think for me
mhm,
part of what gives me joy is showing my range,
mhm,
and the
mhm,
idea that maybe if someone just likes what I do, they'll just pick up and take a chance on no matter what genre, I write.
mhm,
So, but I understand that you identify
mhm.
differently with certain sets of work, you know.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. Some
Yeah.
writers are that way, and some writers just put their name. Like Stephen King, I know been a lot of gruff when he did his like was it Eye of the Dragon,
Oh,
the
yeah.
fantasy novel. And now that he's doing
Mhm.
stuff, it's not. He went through about 10 years where he wasn't really doing horror. He had the noir stuff, and he's
Mhm.
just evolving as a writer. But he doesn't matter because people will read his stuff because they like
Exactly.
him.
Well, I mean,
So
well, Stephen King did Richard Bachman, and I mean, but it's
right,
even what Joe Hill did. I
yeah.
mean, he differentiated himself completely because he didn't want to be recognized as Stephen King's
Right,
son.
which was a fairly poorly disguised, pseudonym. Wasn't a big shocker, but yeah, the Bachman books,
Mhm.
and it's funny that the name sells because they didn't sell anything until it came out that it was Stephen King, and then boom,
Mhm.
all those books went up because he was just flooding the
Mhm.
market. He was just a cocaine machine at the
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly. Mhm.
right?
But
Um,
but the thing with this is like my branding is very fluffy. It's very
yeah,
pastels, it's very hearts and kissy and lovey, and that's so different from the
yeah,
gritty horror. And
yes,
when it comes to branding yourself, I don't want to attract the wrong readers, because I don't want to, how important reviews are to authors as well, especially indie authors. How a handful of bad reviews can really skew your ratings, whether on
mm,
Goodreads, on Amazon, on anything. And I don't want to potentially attract the wrong
sure,
readers and get bad reviews, not because my work sucks, but because, hey, I love the horror book. What the hell is this romance? Or
right.
opposite,
No, I get
or
it.
hey, I love the romance. What the hell was this? Kind of thing. And all of a sudden,
Yeah,
I have a bunch of 1-star reviews, and my rating on Amazon goes from like a 4.8 to like a 2.3, and
yeah.
then so it's not that I'm not proud of it. It's a
I see. I
matter
was
of
unaware of that. I haven't done that much research. I mean, I've gotten a few,
Mhm,
depending on the book. I
mhm,
remember getting on Gage Black. I got my first 1-star review, um,
mhm,
or no, it was for my nonfiction book, Toxic. No, he gave me 3 stars, and he said I wanted to give it 4, but there was just, you know, you used too many f-bombs. And I wrote back, I go, what the fuck's wrong with that? You know? And I thought that's just a great way to deal with it. I'm like,
That's
you
fine.
know, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know, like
Yeah, exactly.
you're gonna see that. And um I've only gotten one that I know of, one-star review on one of my
Mhm.
books. I don't remember which one. It might have been Gage Black, but there was nothing written. Like, I don't care that you hated it. Just tell me why.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm the same way, truly.
don't be a chicken shit and just
Mhm,
give me the 1 star and run
mhm.
away. Like, I
Yeah,
can
don't be a
handle
troll
it.
about it.
Like, I
Mhm,
I'm not in competition with anyone. I'm simply telling a story, and I don't know who's
mhm,
gonna like it and who's not. I If I'm happy with it, that's what matters, you know? Um,
mhm,
that's funny. So,
mhm,
um, okay, you had mentioned Googling before, doing some research. So what
mhm.
kinds of things do you do research for your book?
Well, let me see. Well, the second book, the main character is a police officer. So I did a lot of when I didn't want to harass my neighbor. I did a lot of research on just like the proper names for articles of his uniform. I did research on some of the laws in South Carolina, the traffic, the traffic laws here. Uh, you know, the cop car, stuff like that. Particular roads in and around Charleston. Let me see. Let me see, what did I do for the first book? The main character was based in, or excuse me, the one of the characters was from Chicago, so I did research, in some areas in Chicago. The third book, she's a real estate agent, so I just googled some basic terminology for that, just because I always wanted to be accurate. In the
Hmm.
third book too, he speaks French.
Oh,
So I did bring in a translator for that, just because Google is not always 100% accurate, and you
right. You
don't
might have
want
them
to.
asking for a bunch of cheese or something. You just don't know.
Yes, exactly. You definitely don't want to rely on Google. You always want to make sure that you bring in, a translator or something like that to
Okay.
verify. And luckily one of the readers in my author group, speaks French or took French in high school and college. So she was able to make sure that my translations were accurate.
Oh,
But
nice.
it's just making sure that you stay authentic, because the last thing, and again, the last thing you want is to not be authentic, to not be accurate, or to
Right.
get somebody that reports you for inaccurate information or gives you a bad review for
Sure.
something that could have been prevented
Right.
by
No,
doing your
no.
research. Because I mean, like, there's a difference between, I didn't like this because of A, B, C, or D, or like, then, what were you thinking? This was completely untrue because of,
Right.
something that you could have fixed by spending 5 minutes doing research.
Yeah. And if you're doing speculative fiction or science fiction, that's a whole different matter. So, you know, or
Exactly.
true fantasy, everything's up for grabs, you know. But no, I get that. The For Gage Black, it takes place just after the Civil War, so I did research into the kinds of weapons and like mail routes, and I, you know, there's a lot of invention there, but I had enough terminology to where it was accurate. I knew what weapons
Yeah.
were available and
Mhm.
their calibers and things like that. And then my
Mhm.
last book is called Death's Head: The Eye of Samity. It's
Mhm.
1930s pulp horror. So it takes place near and around Haiti. So I did research into what was going on in Haiti in the 1930s and voodoo and the Loa. And I wanted to be respectful of the religion, you know, the Voodoo and the voodoo practices, and get a feel, because one of the characters, Samity, Baron Samity, is a major player in the story. So I wanted to kind of make sure I did his character accurately, because I want to be respectful of this religion. And but see, but as an academic in me, I love researching. So to me, I just want to do a research where I know it comes out as natural information. I'm not trying to give a history lesson, but the
Yeah.
details are accurate. And
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
little things are what make the story will kind of come across as authentic, I think, you know.
Exactly. Mhm. Where it flows naturally. Yes.
Yeah,
Or
right.
it flows naturally, where it doesn't come across as something that you researched. It comes across as having a conversation like you and I are. Mhm.
Right, exactly, and
Mhm.
I think that's fun. You know, I love that, bringing that in. So, do you have a favorite time of day to write?
I'm much more productive in the morning when it comes to writing. I find that at night, I try to write at night, and it doesn't happen. Normally, I'm tired from either going into the office or working, working all day, and at night I do try to feel like that time needs to be with my family, dinner, bath, bed, all that good stuff. And I am most productive in the morning. And the good thing about working from home, dividing my time between home and the office, is that I can be flexible. And if I have the inspiration, I can take a little bit of time and switch my hours around. So, my lunch can be at 9:30 in the morning if I need it
Sure.
to be. And I can, write when the inspiration hits. But I've consistently been more productive in the morning.
Hmm.
So I like to kind of write when it hits me.
Yeah, when
Mhm,
I was writing every day, that's my morning time was most productive. So
mhm,
I used to be a night owl back when I was younger, and then I just slowly has switched over time to where morning is when I have the energy. By the
mhm,
afternoon, I'm kind of tired. Like, no, I don't feel creative, so I get it.
mhm,
Do you
mhm.
listen to music while you write? And if so, what kinds?
So yes, I definitely listen to music. It really so I'm big into rock. Uh, Let me see. For my first book, I really got into country. For that one, I still listen to a lot of countries. So for this one, I've really kind of gone back to old school. So I've been listening to a lot of Rush. For this one, I've been listening to a lot of I love
Yes.
Rush. I've been listening to a lot of
Yes.
yes, I love Rush. Listen, Getty is like one of my flipping heroes. I've been listening to a lot of Black Crows. I love Magpie Salute. What else have I been listening to?
We have very similar taste in music.
Yay,
I'm
that's
a drummer.
awesome.
I started playing drums when I was 10, so the
Mhm.
professor was my first drum teacher. I used to play the moving pictures. I would just play the whole album. And still a couple things I can't get 100%, but I had about
Mhm.
95% of the record I could play pretty well.
Now that is an accomplishment right there.
Well, there's still some things like that intro on YYZ is still a little
Mhm,
tricky,
mhm,
but pretty much that. But I got like the fills down. Well, close. There's a big drum break in Tom Sawyer that's also very tricky. When you watch the video, it's like, oh, that's what he's doing. So I was close, but that's close enough for me,
mhm,
but that
mhm,
taught me a lot about like those off time signatures and like doing the math. Like you're
mhm,
gonna play 7/8, and everyone else is doing 4/4, and eventually you're gonna come back around, and
mhm, mhm.
So no, that's awesome. That's great.
Did you see the special when Getty and Alex came back, the South Park special? It was the first time that South Park did like a live concert, uh, and it was the 20 or 25-year anniversary of the shows being on, and it was the first
Oh,
time that Getty and Alex had played together since Neil
uh,
had died, and
no,
it was
I did not.
yeah, it was they played closer to the heart. I
Uh,
mean, I got a little misty-eyed because I did not think that they were planning on doing anything after he had
I
died,
think they
and it
weren't.
was
They
it,
just had
it was
shut
it was
down.
fantastic. Well, I knew that Alex had done some stuff with another band.
He started another band. It's kind of weird. I listened to a couple of their tracks. It's not what you want to hear. Like
It's not.
it's
Mhm,
like, but I'm
mhm,
happy that he's happy.
mhm,
But no, like you, like we talk about Neil Peart too much more. I'll probably just cry because it's still a loss that I feel tangibly. Like
mhm,
after having seen them, and they were my bucket list, like bucket list
mhm,
people to meet, bucket list
mhm,
people to bring on the show.
mhm.
If Alex Lifeson were to come on the show, I'd probably just sob, like
Yeah,
a little baby, because
yeah.
their music has just meant so much to me. And Peart as a poet, as a writer, it's like, come on, yeah, no, I totally get that. We'll talk after the show, but we've been doing in heavy metal horror. One of the things we do, we've been doing a deep dive into Rush, where we just go album at a time, track at a time, and talking about
Mhm,
all these songs. So I'll send you
mhm.
links if you're interested. You might enjoy those episodes.
Yes. No, I'd
'Cause,
love that.
yeah, we're all Rush fans. I mean, all
Mhm,
grew up loving Rush and having seen them. I'm so grateful that I got a chance to see them. I think four times, and yeah, Clockwork Angels was such a beautiful swan song. way to finish a career. And I still have a hard time listening to The Garden because it'll just make me sob.
Mhm.
It's that ache of time being taken away, that Neil has writes from time to time, would write about, and that bittersweet. And that solo is just so like, oh, I could just feel the longing and the ache in it.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. Okay. Tell me how you felt seeing your book in print for the first time.
It it was surreal. It was holding it in my hands for the first time. It was I couldn't believe that it was something I had done. It I felt more accomplished then than I did when it first came out, when I first saw it live on Amazon. Something about feeling it, opening it, the tangible proof in my hand. It's just, I mean, I'm sure it was the same way with you. It's just like it's an indescribable feeling of just like the the accumulation of everything, like the tears and just the the it's hard to describe because I mean just the agony that you put yourself through. And I mean you're putting your piece of yourself out there, and I mean truly, and I just think about everything that I had gone through from start to finish with this book, and all that I went through, from finding a cover designer to even starting as an author, from my website and coming up with a pen name and branding myself and social media and coming up with a following and everything. And it was just kind of like tangible proof that not I don't want to say that I was worth something, because those are not the right words at all, but just that I could do
You
it.
could do it. Yes.
Yes.
It's not just an imagination. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you get people asking you, how do you write a book? Yeah. Like, well, how much time do you have?
And
Right.
you're like, that is a really great question.
Yeah. And I tried to tell someone very in a truncated form. This was at a book show I
Mhm,
was doing, and I could tell her eyes just kind of glazed over. And I'm like, well,
mhm.
okay, you really don't want to know that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I understand. My joy was tempered with when I started seeing like the things that had slipped past through five different readers, like the
Mhm.
mistakes
Yeah.
and typos. And I'm like, I just felt so sick to my stomach, like, oh God. And
Mhm.
so had to go back and like, fixing all of these
Yep.
and putting it up in you know, bringing a version out, and kind of making an excuse like, here, the English teacher has typos in his manuscript,
Yep.
and just kind of saying like, look, the first 50 books, look, you're gonna have this, and hey, collector's item for you. But
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
you had to
Mhm.
like go with it, like, well, but that was my first, but you learn. And now
Mhm.
I'm much better
Mhm.
at when I put a book out,
Mhm.
there's not going to be multiple versions. Like, no, unless I have like missed a chapter, uh,
Mhm.
it's going to be in a much better shape. I'm a
Oh,
much
yeah.
better
Yes,
proofreader in
yeah,
my.
my first book didn't have page numbers.
There you go. Right. See, yeah, we learn. Like, okay,
It's a learning curve, and I'm like, seriously, if
yeah,
anybody asks, it's I did this. I did this having no experience, not
yes,
understanding what I was doing. I was, I had a fantastic team of people that were also not very familiar with this helping me, and this was the result. And I am extremely proud of it. And every time I do it again, it is going to get better. But
hmm
I'm not going to change this, because even though there was a mistake, I'm very proud of this.
yeah.
You know,
It's done. You made this piece of art, this
exactly.
living piece. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I get it, because every time then you go back to starting a new story, you have a little bit more confidence, like going
Yes.
into it. Like, since I had written four books in different genres, going
Hmm.
back to my fifth one, which is Return to the Cozy Mystery World, there was a lot of trepidation back to like, God, it's been like 3 years since I wrote this story. Am I gonna feel the same way? Like, I'm in a different headspace. I'm a different writer. Am I gonna be able to like get back into these characters? And once I started writing, it took very, very within 10 minutes, 5 minutes, I'm like, oh, okay, I I'm just like slipping back into a very comfortable sleeve, shirt or something,
Mhm,
it felt very
mhm,
comfortable to me. So it kind of alleviated a lot of anxiety that I had. Like, oh, but if anything, I felt a little more confident in my writing, in my prose. I mean,
mhm,
I'd been an academic writer for decades, but never in like short fiction, and I'd written some movie scripts and things like that, but never a novel. And
mhm.
but so no, I get it. It's all a process, and we are proud of everything. We need to celebrate every victory we have, whether it has missing page numbers or typos. It's like, look,
Exactly.
I still made this, you know?
Mhm, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Have you ever read your own work a year or more after you published it? And if so, what was that experience like?
So that goes back to what I was saying earlier is I tried and I couldn't. And it's just because I'm such a perfectionist. I would have to go back and change so much. Now coming back and saying that is the whole reason why I wrote that novella is because so the Southern Charm series, that's a series of 3 books, and I'm going to release that as a box set with the bonus novella story of the fourth girl. So I'm going to have to combine those books into one ginormous PDF with the novella and release that. So
Nice.
I am really having a crisis of conscience right now.
Because you're gonna
If I
want
if
to
I
re-edit those books.
yes, but like I don't think I have the mental capacity to do
Yeah,
that.
you have to, unless you see
Truthfully.
something egregious,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that and truly the only thing that I think I'm gonna do is, I do wanna make it a little schmancy because I wanna make it appealing to people who have already read the books. I wanna give them something a little bit more enticing than just the extra novella. I am gonna work with a formatter to get the full page pictures, you know, with them. So I'm hoping that we'll at least be able to get page numbers on
Hmm.
everything since it's going to be all 3 of them, and then
Sure.
adding that the bonus short story, and then uh, the background pictures.
Okay,
So
nice. So yeah,
mhm,
a whole new re
mhm,
reimagining of it. Well, that'd be nice.
mhm,
That'll be
mhm.
great.
And I do have to check the page number limitations because I think it's going to be too many page numbers to print through Amazon, but I might be able to do it through Ingram Spark. I have to go and check those limitations, but I need to get everything edited, or I need to get
Well,
everything back first and then check the limitations on Ingram
are you
before we.
turning it into like one book?
Yes, well, yeah. I think
Okay.
and that's really just for me. I don't think that I'm going to actually release that.
Oh, I see.
I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going
Oh,
to
that
do
makes sense.
the box, release the box set as an ebook on Amazon. I don't know if I'm going to put that on KU or not. I might just do that as a set price. I haven't decided.
Okay, cool. So, what is your writer fantasy?
Oh, I don't know. Could you elaborate on what you kind of mean by that?
Well, I leave it open-ended because everyone has a different view of like what they imagine. Like in your perfect world, when you now that you know and you identify yourself as a writer, because that's something we
Hmm.
put on like, yeah, I'm a writer. What
Hmm.
do you imagine, where do you imagine this going 10, 20 years from
Hmm.
now? What would you have liked to have accomplished in that time? In your perfect dream world, Cat Long, writer, or whatever pseudonym you're doing for your horror, whatever it is happens,
Hmm.
where are you going to be like in 20 years kind of thing?
Oh, okay. All
Like,
right. I
yeah,
understand.
that's what I mean. Like your fantasy as a writer, what would you like to accomplish?
Hmm. Hmm. With me, I would, hmm, I don't, because I would like to think that I could do this before like I retire from like my real job. Because I would like to I would like to be able to have this, what am I trying to say? Like I want to be able to make substantial income from this by the time that I am retired from like my real job. I hate saying real job,
Yeah, right. The
but like
job that
from
gets in the way of your writing.
yes, exactly. Oh, that's really good. Yes. Yes. I would like to be able to, yes, to have substantial income from my writing by the time I retire from the job that gets in the way of my
There
writing.
you go.
So I'm feeling that
I
I
should make
should,
that as a shirt. That's
yes.
marketable.
That's going to be my new tagline.
Okay, great.
I'm getting rid of the swoon-worthy alpha marshmallows. Forget that. But yes, so
Just yeah, just give me credit somewhere. That's fine.
so I feel like that. So right now my goal is two full books a year, which I've been pretty consistent with publishing, and then maybe throw in a novella or an anthology if I have time. But I think that realistically, still working and having a family and a at least somewhat active social life that involves leaving my house. That is that's reasonable expectation. So I think
Yeah.
that by the time that I retire, that I should have a significant enough backlist that writing can be entirely pleasurable, and I will have enough of a backlist to have substantial income from that to have a really, really nice retirement.
Nice. Well, I hope you get that. Yeah, that is sometimes when I think about it, like, yeah, real life comes in, and unfortunately, I just started two great jobs, which is fantastic. I took a
Mhm.
5-year hiatus from teaching, and I'm back in the classroom, and I'm working as an e-learning developer. So, which is great. I love it. But now juggling between the two jobs, it's like, okay, now I want to find and carve out a place in my very busy day for writing again. Get back into
Mhm.
just, maybe a couple hours, like from 8 to 10 in the morning or something. Let
Mhm.
me have the 2 hours to write, and that way it just becomes habit. Because that's what I desperately need. But
Mhm.
no, no, that's great. I only have a few more questions for you, Kat. So, what advice would you give for anyone who wants to write?
Consistency. If you want to write, just make it a habit. Make it a habit like you would exercising, like you would eating breakfast because you know that you're supposed to, because it's the healthiest meal of the day. Just set aside time, like you said, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. If you want to write, don't do it. I mean, you can always edit horrible words, but you can't edit words that you don't write, truly. So if you want to do it, you just have to do it.
That's great. Yeah, you got to put it sentence after sentence.
Exactly.
As Stephen King says, it's like building the Great Wall of China. And it had to start with one brick at a time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. So we mentioned earlier your current work in progress. Can you tell us a little bit about this brand new book that you just sent it to the editor?
Oh yes, well, so Frost My Cupcake. So that is, so
It's a great title. It's a great title.
right. So the Southern Charm series. So that is 3 books, but it is a group of 4 girls. So the fourth girl, Olivia, she was already married when the series started. So I felt like she needed her own book, but she's only getting a novella because she was already married, so she doesn't need her happily ever after, so she already has one.
But
So
she's
she,
married, right? No,
yes,
I'm sorry. That was just too easy.
yes. So she's the owner of a bakery. So
Oh,
I
nice.
just, yes, exactly. So I loved the title Frost
Yeah,
My Cupcake,
right,
and
right.
truly this is just a fun little story about the two of them about to go on their baby moon. It's just fluffy and smutty and just really, really cute. It's a good story. I like it a lot. And so actually the second book in the Southern Charm series has Mark Hansen, and he is a police officer, and he has 3 older brothers, and the 3 older brothers, that is the spin-off series that I am working on now that Frost Your Cupcake is off to the editor. So the first book in that series is called Crush, and that's the one that I'm going to be diving into now that Frost My Cupcake
Nice.
is out of my hands. So those are my 2 current work in progresses.
I like that. I like that. Okay, I'd never heard the term baby moon before. Can you tell us or tell me what I'm guessing it's something you do after you have a baby? You go out and once I mean, as I've never heard of the term.
sorry. A baby moon is a honeymoon that you take before you have a baby. So they're pregnant.
Oh, oh, I
Yes,
see. Okay,
yes, yes,
all
yes,
right.
yes, yes.
Yeah, because once
So
you have the kid, it's like, oh, that's it. The next 20 years of our life, that's it, right?
exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
She's pregnant. Yeah, so she's pregnant
okay,
right now. And to give a little bit of the story away, she's at the stage in her pregnancy where she's horny all the time. Hence the
okay,
term frost my cupcake. So they're taking their baby moons. They're getting in the husband and wife time before the baby comes. So
okay.
so they're taking their baby
Well,
moon.
I learned something new today,
Mhm.
Kat. I'd never heard that term before, so now I understand. Thank you for
Mhm.
helping me out with that. And you've already mentioned this before, but this is the last question I like to ask: is
Mhm.
where can we find your books?
So all of my books are available on Amazon. So they are in KU, which is Kindle Unlimited. So if you have your Kindle Unlimited subscription, you can read them for free. If you do not have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, the first one, Had to Make You Mine, is $3.99. The other two are $4.99. I also have two little novellas that are there as well. And then I am going to be releasing the box set of all three of them with the bonus novella, Frost Your Cupcake, hopefully within the next month or so. We'll see how quickly I can get the editing back and let go of my perfectionist or perfectionism. Let's pretend like I pronounced that correctly. And get that published, and then you can look for the first book in the Guys series, which I believe I'm going to call the Southern Sparks series. That's debatable next year, but yes, all of them are on Amazon, and then I'm on social media too. I'm even slowly wading through the big bad waters of TikTok.
Hashtag book talk,
Yeah,
right?
hashtag
Yeah.
book club. Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's great.
Mhm.
I'll have to find you on Facebook as well because we know each other through Instagram.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
well, fantastic. Kat, I want to thank you for being on Between the Lines today. It has been a pleasure to get to know you and learn about you as a writer and as a person. So I just appreciate that you spent some time with me today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I really, really enjoyed it this morning.
Good, good. I'm glad. Well, I'm going to do my commercial and then we'll get out of here.
Sounds good.
You've been watching and listening to Between the Lines. You can find us at unsaneradio.com, listen to full episodes, or download to your device. You can watch us on our YouTube page, Between the Lines Podcast. If you're watching, that's where you're at. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. And you can also find us on Otel Talk on Roku. If you know someone who'd like our show, tell them about us. And if you're a writer and would like to join me for a chat, email me at betweenthelines54 at yahoo.com. That's between the lines 54 at yahoo.com. And Kat, here's my cheesy outro. See you next time between the lines.